Hello again, and thanks for joining us. Coming up tonight, one gem of a con, a worldwide scam that's relieved Watchdog viewers of thousands. Plus, anything else you want to tell us about. 081 743 5555 is the number to ring. If there's something you think we should investigate, our team, of course, awaits your calls. But first, here's Lynn.
When we receive your complaints here at Watchdog, we never know what we'll uncover. Take all these about emergency plumbers. We started investigating and discovered a huge business ripping people off when they're at their most vulnerable.
It's everyone's nightmare. Taps dripping in the dead of night, keeping you awake. Blocked drains seeping sewage smells into your neighbours' houses. Over the Christmas period, crises like these will put thousands of us in the hands of emergency plumbers.
If you need something quickly, we'll help you find the right shops and services in your area.
Talking pages, yellow pages, Thompson directories, they'll all help in an emergency, but will they find you the right service? When his drain was blocked, teacher Keith Shipton chose what he trusted was right, the company with the most impressive credentials.
Well, it was full to the brim with muck.
It was Anthony Deans, a South London firm of emergency plumbers, who got Keith's call at 6:30 in the morning.
He was to and fro quite a lot with different kinds of rods, screwing them together. He put one down this drain, and he certainly put them down the one that was flooded over there as well. But after a few minutes, he told me not just that the job was going to cost more in effort, but he said that it was going to cost more in chemicals as well. And he did sometime during the day mention sulfuric acid.
But that didn't clear the drain. Next, the plumber got out his high-speed jetting machine, which can clear drains in minutes, but not the Anthony Deans jetter.
The engine in the jetter was on for a very long time, 2 to 3 hours, and that was operating even when he was sitting in his car reading his newspaper.
Now, let me show you something amazing. This is actually the inside of Keith Shipton's drain 6 hours after the plumber started work. Now, sure enough, there's the blockage back there. Remember, the rods have been down here, the high-speed jetter has been down here for hours, there's been loads of chemicals poured down here. So you'd expect by now that this would be the cleanest drain in Britain. But what's this? Cobwebs? And more cobwebs? Keith's drain could not have been touched with anything. Where did we get the pictures of the inside of Keith's drain? Well, from the Anthony Deans plumber himself, who at 4 o'clock in the afternoon decided that he needed a closed-circuit TV survey of the drain to help find the blockage. He then gave this video to Keith as evidence for any insurance claim, and without realising how it incriminated him. Within an hour of supposedly finding the blockage, the drain was cleared. 7¼ hours after the plumber started, Keith Shipton was horrified to find himself presented with a bill for £1,863. If only Keith had known it, the local council could have saved him most of his money, either by dishing out advice or doing the job themselves.
They were using a jetting unit, they were using rods and a sunny snake. Now, with this kind of equipment, they should have been able to clear that drain within 2 hours. I mean, either the man was totally incompetent or they were conning Mr. Shipton.
What do you think the job should have cost?
I would have thought no more than a couple of £100 at the most. You wouldn't even need a jetter for the kind of blockage that we saw on the video that was supplied by them.
Keith Shipton's extortionate work was done by a plumber apparently called M. Smithers. But take a look at another invoice dated 3 years ago by plumber Mark Smith, who then worked for a company called Tradesman Limited. Handwriting analysis showed that the same man wrote both these invoices, so now we knew where this Mark Smith, for that's his real name, had learnt to rip people off. 4 years ago, you might remember we investigated Tradesman Limited, said to be one of the biggest plumbing businesses in Britain and based in Croydon. Hundreds of complaints poured in, mainly about gross overcharging for work and materials. To find out why overcharging was so rife among tradesmen plumbers, we wired up a member of the Institute of Plumbing and sent him along for a job. What he got was training in how to rip people off.
Remember, the customer's always wrong. The customer's always wrong, and never trust the customer. Never give the customer an inch. All right? When you go and get materials, if you go and get some materials, and there's a shop 5 minutes down the road, go and get the materials, go and have a cup of tea for half an hour. I mean, charge them for the time.
If you think that's outrageous, wait till you hear some of the other ideas the management has got for cultivating the job.
You know, if you get problems on a job and you're not sure how you can cultivate that job, you know, how you can grade it into a big job, you can phone through, ask any of the managers, myself or Andy Hunter, and they'll explain to you how you can make the job bigger. And never take heed of what the actual job description is. If it's no price given, then it's up to you to charge what you feel the customer's going to wear.
One of the 2 directors behind Tradesmen Limited, Tommy Byrne, eventually agreed to give us an interview. Was he aware of what his manager, Kevin, was telling recruits?
We have whole tapes obviously full of this, but this is another choice part.
If you can off each job, because you haven't got to work hard. I mean, if you do a 10-hour day, I'll bet you've only worked 4 hours, and the rest of the time you're having to fade up in this loft or just generally taking the time. Right. When you go and get materials, if you go and get some materials, and there's a shop 5 minutes down the road, go and get the materials, go and have a cup of tea for half an hour.
He's definitely going to be dismissed.
Are you saying this isn't business practice?
Of course I'm saying that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
It may have been exactly what Tommy Byrne was saying, but when tradesmen went bust, Tommy and his brother Nicky Byrne continued to expand their plumbing empire in the same old way.
He was in the office. He'd incite us to really prolong the jobs, get the money in. He definitely knew about it, and he actively encouraged it. There's no doubt about that.
Former employees like this plumber have told us that it was business as usual after our revelations about how customers were cheated.
The company was definitely making a lot of money. Good 50 engineers on the books. If you take an average of £150 per job, I think it'd be fairly close. And there's certainly 50, 60 jobs going out per day. There was a lot of money coming into that office.
And into lots of other offices connected with the Byrne family and their associates. Plumbing companies around or in the pipeline before tradesmen went bust flourished, and so did the complaints.
Good morning. I've got a complaint to make about this firm of plumbers.
A complaint with a plumber? Which one is that?
We've got another one of these complaints about a plumbing company.
1A Addison.
1A Addison. Directors, Mickey Byrne and Joseph Johnson.
Which one is it? AAA London Services Limited.
AAA London Services, the wives of tradesmen directors.
A1 All Trades.
A1 All Trades, set up by the tradesmen directors themselves, Tommy Byrne and Anthony Dobinson.
Hello, Croydon Consumer Advice.
Most expensive complaint tended to be blocked drains.
Well, drains were a great money spinner. The customer only knew that he or she had a blockage. How severe it was, they had no idea. That could be spun out for hours and hours and hours.
Or days and days and days. 3 days to be precise for the 1A Addison plumber who tackled Robin Verdon's blocked drain. Sewage was seeping from this manhole in the back garden and the toilet was blocked. Robin rang for an emergency plumber. He chose Addison's because, among other things, in Yellow Pages they promised no call-out charge. But day one, the first thing the plumber did?
He asked to use the telephone to ring through to his office to give them my Barclay Visa number. Having done that, we went into the garden. He said, right, I'm going to pour this, which he described as acid, into the manhole. I thought, well, it would only dilute anyway. He said, well, this should do the job. And off he went.
But that didn't do the job. Chemicals can't unblock a drain.
They rodded and rodded and rodded. And later I found that they'd been jetting up the soil pipes, up the house. And there was muck all over my shower room where they'd jetted.
With the blockage still there, next tactic, call for the camera.
Around about 10 o'clock, a chap arrived with a camera and took one look, and he said, no, he said, I can't do anything about this. So, until the drains are emptied.
Hours later, they found the blockage in his neighbour's garden. Another firm was called in to clear it. Armed with Robin Verdon's visa number, 1A Addison plundered his account to the tune of £1,051. The owner of this salon had a similar experience with another burn company when hair blocked the drain. Ahmad Amiri had unblocked it before himself and expected a small bill. The 3A London Services plumber claimed the job took an hour and a half and needed high-speed jetting. The salon's drain pipe is just 4 feet long. No bill appeared, just his access statement showing he'd been charged £364.
I was devastated when I saw that it's £364.25, because I could have a new drain for cheaper than that.
The engineers, well, they got split 60-40. That's 60% to Addison's, 40% the engineer that was on the label.
What about materials?
If it was a £50 part, he got his £50 that he paid for it. If he charged the customer £100, then he'd get £25 of that. The other 25 would go to Addison's.
Our emergency plumbing nightmares have made fortunes for Tommy Byrne and his associates over the last few years. If the number of new companies is anything to go by, business is booming. We estimate to millions of pounds a year, but it's impossible to tell. Money is moved around between a number of companies which come and go. While Tommy Byrne is living in luxury, rearing Arabian horses in the middle of the Surrey countryside, single parent Jenny Graham is struggling to bring up her 3 boys on income support. Their Christmas has just been ruined by the need to call out a plumber.
A few days ago, 1A Addison struck again, converting this soggy mess into the most expensive toilet roll in Britain. When it fell down a Wimbledon toilet, an Addison plumber took 2 hours to get it back out again and came up with a bill for £336.
When I rang the company, I asked how much it would be because I knew that I couldn't afford to pay very much. And I was told it would be £35 plus VAT and chemicals if they were used.
Yellow Pages and Thompsons have got a lot to answer for in all this. Thompsons don't even stick in addresses for companies, which means that you can't tell that many ads are placed for the same people. And Yellow Pages, they're running a television ad right now, which is really about how to avoid cowboys. Who do they use to illustrate it? Him. But this is an ad for A1 All Trades, the Phoenix, which Tommy Byrne made arise from the ashes of tradesmen. Yet when tradesmen went bust, they owed Yellow Pages £128,000. The good news for Jenny Graham and her children, I rang the directors of 1A Addison. Nicky Byrne now has offshore companies and is at present in the tax haven of the Isle of Man, but the other director, Joseph Johnson, agreed the bill was too high and says they will probably give Jenny most of her money back. We'll let you know what happens to the other cases we've featured. Best advice on how to avoid cowboy plumbers. With drains, your local council environmental services people are the experts to talk to. What's more, they'll often get the job done for you. Work on mains drains is free if you use the council. Plumbing in general, the Institute of Plumbing will send you a list of registered plumbers in your area if you ring them on 0708 472 791. Handy if you have an emergency. Needless to say, none of the Byrne Group is a member.
Now remember, the burn companies we have been concentrating on are these. They're both based at Commercial House, Vicarage Road in Croydon. 1A Addison Limited is at London Road, Norbury. In the same street are plumbers Anthony Deans. Although they use some tradesman-trained plumbers, the management is different from the burn companies. Of course, not all emergency plumbers are cowboys. These may be the most extreme examples. What do you think? Give us a call now on 081 743 5555. Next, the strange tale of the Dulux dog paint that's got everyone licked. When Patrick Callaghan decided that the outside of his Sheffield house needed a new look, he chose a paint he thought he could trust. Dulux Weathershield.
I do solemnly swear to do what's right by these 4 walls. I shall arm myself with Dulux Weathershield sand-textured paint, with its unique ICI durable polymer. I shall not stint, nor skimp, nor corners cut. Unlike the bandit who did me guttering. For here shall I stand in days to come and say, I did that.
Well, Patrick wanted to say the same, so he bought a 5-litre can of Dulux Weathershield Magnolia from his local B&Q. Now, that was in June. 5 weeks later, in the middle of August, there was a terrible downpour. And this was the result. Horrible white liquid streaking down the house, blotching all the walls. Not a very impressive performance from the paint that claims it stays cleaner for longer. So Patrick took his tin back to B&Q, who sent it back to ICI Paints, the makers of Dulux. 5 weeks later, they replied,
"We have tested the sample and found it not to be our material."
What? Not their paint? But this is the tin Patrick bought. As you can see, it's a Dulux Weathershield Magnolia can, bought from the largest DIY chain in the country. But ICI were adamant. Not only was it not their paint, they couldn't explain how the stuff in the tin, a sort of inferior whitewash, had got there. What's more, they weren't going to pay Patrick any compensation towards getting it off his wall, which is all very odd, because what they didn't tell Patrick was that another person in Sheffield, Paul Flanagan, had also complained about a duff tin of Dulux Weathershield Magnolia he'd bought, not from B&Q, but from his branch of Do-It-All, and ICI paid him £300 compensation. So, what on earth is going on? Well, since we got involved, ICI Paints have started a major investigation, and they tell us they've discovered several more tins of fake paint in Sheffield stores, plus one that's turned up in a Do-It-All in Bristol. All 5-litre tins like this one of Dulux Weathershield Magnolia Smooth Masonry paint. No other colours or textures of Weathershield seem to be involved. Now, ICI, breaking nor indeed Digby here, are any the wiser. Perhaps you have a clue. If so, give us a call.
Now, take a look at these. Earlier this year, we told you how some Watchdog viewers had been conned out of thousands of pounds by fraudsters selling these kind of gems to the UK from the continent. Since then, more victims have emerged, with evidence of an even more spectacular scam. Simon Walton reports.
It isn't just the alluring twinkle that makes them so attractive. For many, it's the promise that in turbulent times, precious stones will keep their value as an investment. That's how Catherine Q was persuaded to part with her life savings of £45,000. Christopher Davey spent £25,000. They bought their gems from the now-defunct Royal Antwerp Group, and both have lived to regret the day the company first called them.
The people at the Royal Antwerp Group said they were gem brokers, and I asked them, I said, look, I know nothing about gemstones. I'm going to trust you the way I trusted my stockbroker for shares. Oh, yes, absolutely. And I did. They even said I should mortgage my house, sell all my shares, and they would guarantee that this would come back. They said they would guarantee it would come back.
Having spent £25,000 on them and learnt that the Royal Antwerp Group had gone down, the first thing I did was to go to a jeweller in Bath and try and get them valued.
He was in for a shock. His 6 gemstones, which cost him £25,000, seem impressive enough in their official-looking mountings. So do Catherine's ruby, sapphires and emerald, for which she paid £45,000. But how much are their collections really worth? We took the stones to an expert valuer for his verdict.
Well, these gems of Catherine's here are very ordinary quality. They're probably less than commercial quality, and their whole value at a realisable price is probably about £2,600. And these of Major Davies are probably even poorer quality, and I would value those in the region of about £1,500.
Needless to say, my heart sank at this news.
So instead of keeping my money in nice, safe British shares, I'm now having to look at my pension to keep me alive.
But there were more surprises to come. The Royal Antwerp Group may have folded, but its customer list lives on, and it's found its way into the hands of a fresh set of fraudsters with an even more devious trick up their sleeves. The unscrupulous gem dealers have come up with a new strategy to part you from your money. It's called the resale deal. They offer you not only the chance to recoup your losses, but to make a huge profit on top. But there is a catch. This is how it works. You have a collection of gems called a portfolio, and the dealer promises you a buyer for that portfolio. But it turns out that you just happen to lack one crucial gem to complete a set. And guess what? The dealer can provide that gem for you. You buy it, make up the set, and then the whole lot goes on to this mystery client, and you make a killing. Sounds like just the answer, and having been lumbered with poor value gems by Royal Antwerp, Catherine and Christopher soon found themselves on the receiving end of this new racket.
The next stage was the phone call from Manila saying that they had got what they called my liquidation portfolio. In other words, they were the good guys who had picked up this portfolio that the bad guys, the Royal Antwerp group, had sold me, and they were going to get my money back for me.
I received a phone call from Divine Jewels, who said they could sell my portfolio so long as I was able to let them top up with 2 rubies. They would sell it to a client in London for $80,000 odd. All I had to do was to send them something like $3,000 for these other 2 jewels, and then sit on my hands until the end of the month.
Catherine wasn't tempted. She had no money left anyway. But Christopher took up his offer from a company called Divine Jewels. He bought 2 top-up gems, a ruby and a sapphire. He paid nearly $4,000. That's over £2,600.
I sat back for the close of deal date. I called Divine Jewels the day after, and they were not answering their phone. And I suddenly realized that I had been suckered again.
The scam was complete. Divine Jewels had Christopher's money, but surprise, surprise, the mystery buyer he'd been promised never turned up. So what are his top-up jewels actually worth?
These 2 stones, rather interesting, totally different. The ruby is quite reasonable quality, and I would estimate a value for that for about £400. But the sapphire, absolutely useless. It's so poor quality that it's probably not even worth the box it's packaged in.
Divine Jewels were based here in Toronto in Canada. The shop's now deserted. Toronto itself has earned the reputation as the gemstone swindle capital of the world. Every month, Toronto detectives deal with hundreds of complaints from across the globe.
We have a list of over now 160 different companies that are operating or have operated in Metro. On any given day, there's about 30. They'll run for a certain period of time, then fold their tents, move on, start under a new name.
What should people do if they get calls from Toronto gem dealers?
First, don't believe a word they're saying. I've never heard of anybody liquidating their portfolio to their advantage. Never, ever have I heard of anyone who sold their gems at a profit to themselves. Don't go for it.
Somebody has got to do something about it. It's worldwide. And there are far too many other people, especially in this country, that are going to be getting phone calls from these people. And they must on no account part with anything. It's going to be difficult. I was tempted. Very tempting indeed.
And someone who wishes he'd never been tempted is Christopher Davey.
I have had a lot of cold calling from double glazing salesmen and so on, but these boys are in a league all their own. They are very convincing.
And let me make it absolutely plain. All the companies dealing in those not-so-precious stones operated from abroad and should not be confused with companies of similar names based here in the UK. In the meantime, the advice to anyone contacted by companies like these is simple. Put the phone down. Some of your calls to us in just a minute, but first a programme stocking filler sent to us by Mike Drury and his chums who work for Lothian Trading Standards up in Edinburgh. It's these Thunderbirds chocolates. Well, at least they look like Thunderbirds chocolates, but Alice, what is actually inside, for example, the one that has a Thunderbirds rocket on the wrapper?
It's a garden gnome.
Gnomes are good, don't quite have the same ring somehow. What about the one that has a penguin on the wrapper?
Well, I'm afraid it's another garden gnome.
We're not doing very well, are we? What about the one that has a clown on the wrapper? Okay. Don't tell me.
A garden gnome.
It's a garden gnome. Now, if it's not a stupid question, How come Melsis, who describe themselves as purveyors of traditional quality confectionery for over 80 years, how do they account for this?
Well, Paul Muster, who's in charge of customer relations at Meltis, was disarmingly frank. He said they have only got the one mould. In his words, children will just have to use their imagination.
But just so that children know precisely, no matter what they buy, Thunderbirds, gnomes, clowns, whatever, you're going to get a gnome, kids. Right, what else are people calling about, Ali?
Well, we've had a cautionary tale for anyone tempted to make personal calls from the office telephone. David Gallagher from Stockport was just leaving work one Friday night when he couldn't resist calling the William Hill race line to see if his horse had won. It's an 0891 number giving a recording of all racing events. When he returned to work on Monday morning, David picked up the receiver to make a call, and on the line came the William Hill race line. David had left the phone off the hook all weekend. When his boss got the bill, it came to a staggering £1,100.
Has David still got a job?
He has. He's got a very sympathetic boss, and he's got to pay the bill, but he's still got a job.
Right, but he's a lucky man. What happened to the horse, by the way?
It came last.
It came last. You may remember the call we had the other week about a poor lady who'd found herself billed for £2,000 for a takeaway curry because of a credit card mistake. Well, we had another call from Christopher Spalding, this one in Norwich, who had an equally shocking experience when he looked at his bank statement and discovered that a bunch of flowers sent by Interflora to America for a friend's anniversary had cost him the princely sum of £37,023.70. We can't say often enough, check your bills. Lots and lots of calls about plumbers. One lady saying she was charged £363